Everyday people in everyday places across the world are finding God. All of this has been made through him. He has promised to be with us. Where are you seeing him? Let's get sharing. Encounters. Stories of encounter with God.
Hello everyone, I want to tell you about an encounter I had with God that happened a couple of months ago, but really blew me away. Before I do that, can I just point out, here I am yet again in my wonderful inspiration point, I call it. It's actually really Sutton Harbour in Plymouth. So if you can hear lots of like fishery industrial noise in the background, the odd seagull flying across making a noise, or singing should I say, that's why. So yeah, the encounter story. I am always blown away by how much it feels like God has gone before us when it comes to contacting someone for an interview on God Stories Today. So I might email someone anywhere in this country, and now with the sort of permission to use Zoom because of lockdown, it's actually sort of broadened out to being across the world. And I'm constantly astonished, in wonder and joy by how many people say yes to being interviewed. And it really is just such a wonderful faith-building experience of just seeing God move and going before us and preparing the way when it comes to contacting these people. But there was one particular moment, one particular interview that's going to come out in about a month that really epitomises the whole thing that I'm talking about, with some additions as well. So here goes. When I first felt God call me to start God Stories Today, I wondered, who do I contact? Who would I really love to interview? And there was one particular person who is a multi-million pound businessman and a Christian. And I thought, wouldn't it just be amazing to interview him, get his God story, and put that up on God Stories Today? And I thought, crumbs, is he ever really going to be able to respond to me? I'm just a priest in the Church of England, and he's a hard-nosed businessman, even though he's a Christian as well. He's just not going to have the time. So anyway, I contacted him, and rather wonderfully, he replied via his PA and said, yes, would absolutely love to do this. So I was like absolutely blown away. So that in itself is kind of, if you like, an encounter with God, an encounter with his blessing, an encounter with God's power, an encounter with like God going before us in God's Stories Today and preparing the way. So that was just a wonderful thing in and of itself. However, it doesn't stop there. His PA said that this guy, who, as I said, he's a multi-millionaire, he started a business in a local sort of like shop sort of environment and turned it into a national business with about 130 shops across the nation, and it is the most successful version of this particular type of shop. And I'm being a bit cryptic here because his interview hasn't come out just yet and he hasn't approved it yet, so I want to sort of just respect that dynamic, but it will come out in a couple of months' time, if not a month. But anyway, his PA said that he would like the interview to happen on an estate that's just outside London. Now this estate, just to give you a picture of the scene, it's probably about 60 to 100 acres of prime Berkshire sort of land. It's got this like 17th century sort of cluster of buildings right in the middle of it, and bless his heart, he had bought the entire estate and put it into trust for children. Deprived children who needed, if you like, their hope to be restored. And he bought the entire thing. Must have cost him millions and millions of pounds, and he put it all into trust for young children who just need that sort of like hope restored in their life. So she said what he would love to do is to have the interview to take place there. Now the thing to bear in mind is that the only people who knew about the arrangements for this interview were his PA, him and me, and bless his heart, the caretaker of the estate. Not the manager, the caretaker of the estate. So my wife and I, we turned up bleary-eyed on the morning of the interview. It was foggy, it was crumbs, who knows what o'clock in the morning. And the caretaker, bless his heart, he was there to let us in, and it really was early. So thank you, Mr. Caretaker. We were directed to this converted sort of like, I was going to say barn, but it wasn't really. It was more like a milk sort of like barn from yesteryear. And we were directed to this wonderful place. And we set up our equipment and we waited for this gentleman to be interviewed to come along. And then suddenly outside there was the roar of this beautiful sounding sports car. And I looked out the window, and I'm not quite sure if it was an Aston Martin DB9, but it certainly looked like it, and I was very, very jealous. And out he popped, and he came in, and the interview started, and he was just astonishing, and I can't wait for the interview to come out. He was just brilliant, 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 brilliant. But here's the thing, and this is the encounter. This is God going before us. This is God's blessing. This is God working even whilst we're not working. This is God working even whilst we're asleep and just making things happen. Unbeknown to me, during the interview, the manager, not the caretaker, the manager of the estate arrived. And he saw what we were doing, but diligently waited outside the building that we were doing the interview in so as not to sort of disturb and make a lot of noise. And he came up to me at the end of the interview and he said, so who are you then? You know, what are you about? What are all these cameras and lights and so forth? What's going on? And I told him we're from God Stories Today, and we're here interviewing this guy who owns, this estate, as it were, and obviously is the multi-million pound businessman and Christian with this amazing God story. He said, He said, that's rather interesting. He said, because most of the people who work on this estate are Christians themselves, and we often get together and have prayer gatherings. And at one of these recent prayer gatherings, it came to mind that it would be really, really good. It would be a fantastic idea if we recorded our own God stories and put them out there on whatever platform, basically, for people to be blessed by, for people to be inspired by, for people to be enthralled and well, as I said, blessed by. He said, but we just didn't know how to do it. But at this particular prayer gathering where the idea popped into our minds to be able to do that, someone said, well, we might not be able to do it, but I just feel like I've had a word from God that in the not too distant future, a storyteller would arrive and be able to record our stories for us. The manager, having witnessed us interviewing this amazing gentleman, this amazing businessman, and then finding out who we are, his jaw spiritually hit the floor. And basically, you guys must be the storytellers foretold in that vision that we had at that prayer gathering. And would you like to record our stories? Of course, we said yes. And now we've got a date towards the end of August, beginning of September, where we're going to turn up at this amazing estate yet again and record the stories of whoever actually wants to be recorded, because they've got a vast staff team in this estate and they've got a whole bunch of volunteers. And there will be long interviews, there'll be short interviews, there'll be 5-minute interviews, there'll be 10-minute interviews, there'll be hour-long interviews, however long these people want it to be. But isn't that just the most amazing story of encounter with God, encounter with his power, his providence, encounter with his going before us and preparing the way? And it just makes you feel that even in the twists and turns of life, no matter what's going on, that actually God's in charge and he will have his will, and love will win. And in some sense, love has already won. Isn't that just amazing? I hope that blessed you. And I hope God Stories Today is blessing you. Keep praying for God Stories Today, because we've got lots and lots of plans for it. And it's only actually really going to come about if we're always in tune with God's will and with his grace and his power. So keep praying for God Stories Today. And I hope, as I said, this encounter story this morning really, really reached into your soul, especially if you're going through a bad time. If you're celebrating right now, happy days. We're celebrating with you. Woohoo! But if you're not going through the best of time, know that God works even when we're asleep and goes before us and prepares the way. So God bless you. Thanks a lot.